Ain't you tired of that same old thing? There ain't no shame, cause everybody ain't gonna change. Moxie's looking to stop Le Champion. His cover's blown, can't fool us for too long. We need a real world champ, no more cheap shots. Consider Mox the right doctor for the detox. You know when ANC's on the track, the beat pops. When all the leaves stuff.
One hell of a year for yours truly. It's been one hell of a long road, but I didn't win this. I didn't win this tonight. It doesn't belong to me. Just like AEW belongs to you, because you, the fans, the wrestling fans, have been driving AEW forward. You are the energy that fuels AEW.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite podcast. I am your host, as always, All Elite Andy, and I am joined by my boys, Big Match AJ and Philip Domino. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, doing good.
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Good, man. Enjoying the day. You know, had a lot going on in the morning. Had to do some radio stuff for school. Haven't been busy throughout the day though, so got to really hang out and relax, which is good because my girlfriend's been sick. But other than that, not a whole lot going on. Not really a whole lot going on in the world of AEW. But Phil, you did get a chance to finish watching the Dynamite pay-per-view. We didn't get you on the podcast on Saturday to discuss your thoughts on the pay-per-view. How did you enjoy it, and how did your girlfriend Kira enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I don't know if it was the best pay-per-view of the ones that we've seen so far, just because there were a few key segments that really stood out, and then there were a few key segments for me that didn't stand out that I thought were going to stand out, namely the Cody MJF match. I really personally didn't think that popped on screen as much as I thought it would, and the Dean Ambrose,
John Moxley.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old AJ flub there. But yeah, we had John Moxley take on Jericho. That one was a little bit lackluster in terms of a main event match, and that MJF Cody match too. It wasn't that it was bad. It just wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
No, the thing that I thought was lacking in the two matches there was because the false finishes, the kickouts, I felt like they weren't as apparent as they were in like the tag match. In the tag match, they were apparent and they made sense and it added to the match. But these two grudge matches that have been hyped up for months and months, there weren't a lot of false finishes. There was like your standard generic heel work, and then there was like the face coming back, and then you had your results, but it didn't pop on screen the way that the other matches did.
I didn't mind the no false finishes. I minded more the just odd stuff that was going on. And with the MJF Cody one specifically, I thought they just needed MJF to really get more shit in.
Oh no, for me, I thought the false finishes were they needed them. If you're gonna throw them in on seemingly random tag matches, then for the matches that you've been hyping up for months and months and weeks, you would assume that they would be there too. Everybody would get their shit in. Everybody's hitting their best moves. If this is really going to be their quote unquote WrestleMania, then you would hope to see. I mean, man, look. All right. In the great tag match that we saw added to the match, but we didn't see any of that in the last hour of the show. The whole last hour of the show, MJF, Cody, Cassidy, Pac.
There were a couple of falses in that Cassidy Pac one that had you on the edge of your seat thinking maybe Orange could really get it going, especially with the momentum he had going into the pinfall.
I feel like the real momentum there was because we don't know what Orange Cassidy's finisher is. We don't have an established finisher like we do with some of these other guys who have real established finishers. When you see that move, it leads to the end of the match every single time. With Cassidy, he hit a lot of stuff, the air raid crash, stuff like that. He did get his shit in, man. But at no point in the match did I actually think, man, he's gonna win this match. He's gonna go over Pac, and it's gonna be great. I don't know. I'm not saying that they were bad matches. I'm just saying that the surprise element wasn't there. But I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I think that in especially the MJF and Cody match, if you had the thought that maybe MJF was really gonna walk away with that one, well, or Cody, I'm sorry, and had the thought that he was really gonna walk away with that one, even when he was hitting the 3 crossroads, there wasn't a big thought in my
Yeah.
mind that MJF wasn't gonna still somehow steal it. And when he went for that third one, it was like, okay, he is going to steal it. Like there wasn't a whole lot of thought in my mind of will MJF or will Cody, I'm sorry, win this match, because it just didn't ever seem like it with the way the story was built. And maybe had Cody gone for a pin before the third one, gone hit 2, went for a pin, maybe you would have bought into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which I
that's
guess
fair.
you want to
Yeah,
protect Cody's finish, but
See, the reason that match affected me so much is because I was talking about I
Lost it.
did.
we lost it. But no, the match itself was overall not terrible, but I think that in general, with how that story came together, they were missing something to really put it to that next level. And it's not really a detriment to either guy. It's not to say that it was an awful match. It just didn't really deliver in terms of the story we had around it, which happens sometimes in sports in general. Sometimes you have a bigger story than the actual competition itself, and that's pretty much what happened here.
Yeah, I don't know what was missing from this match. Was it high spots? Because neither men are actually like known for doing those dives on the outside, doing crazy shit that you could be a casual fan and you're just looking up on the TV and you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that guy just did that." But they wrestled a slow, low key, very traditional
Methodical.
kind of
Yeah.
match. Yeah, they followed a storyline where it was Cody's broken toe, and then
Mhm.
Wardlow was going after the arm like he did for his brother, and there was a lot. There was a lot of stuff to this match, but on screen overall, it didn't come across as great as some of the other matches did, and it was weird because the middle matches were like the best part of the show, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken.
Yeah, they definitely were.
Yeah, and I think the
Even
one
days
thing,
from now,
the
it
thing that it
feels
was
like that.
missing was probably legitimate aggression because of the story that was built
Yeah.
up and the things that Cody had to go through in order to get this match in general. And
Yeah,
then he sort of just comes out, and while it wasn't just a regular match, it still wasn't the aggressive nature that I thought we were going to get from the jump, and took a minute to really even get into something where either of these guys felt like they really had disdain for each other in a
so
genuine way.
I'm gonna compare these two segments for you. So Darby Allen and Sammy Guevara. One week he smashes Darby's throat on the skateboard, and when this match starts, Darby dives out of the ring onto Sammy, and they get into an immediate brawl. And for this match, Cody MJF, which has been hyped up even more,
Mhm.
twice as much, I'd say, they didn't start off like that. You know,
Yeah.
if I don't want to like nitpick or like say, oh, this started shittily, but if you're thinking of like a real blood feud, it's going to start off the way that Sammy and Darby started. Darby dove out of the ring. He was so anxious to start the beating. He fucking dove out the ring and started beating his ass. Man, that's what happens when you have a real blood feud.
I
And
almost
Mhm.
and
I almost wonder if maybe Cody, being an old school type of guy, saw that happen earlier on in the show and realized he couldn't necessarily go that route because we had
yeah, I
already seen it earlier on. And I mean, that's the only thing I could possibly think of, because instead it was a much more, like AJ said, more methodical, slow paced. Cody looking to get his revenge, but MJF very much being the schmarmy get away type of heel. And it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. But I think that's also because this isn't the last match. It kind of goes
Yeah,
back
no
to
way.
when we saw
yeah.
Cody and Pac wrestle, or Kenny and Pac wrestle the first time. We were like, well, that wasn't exactly what I expected. And then we realized there was much more to come. With this
Mhm.
feud, it's not done with this match, so they have to save a
Oh,
couple of
yeah.
things. So
I agree.
rather,
I just thought that Cody would when I it's ironic because when I was last on this podcast, I was like, "There's no way Cody's gonna win," and then you were like, "Well, why would MJF if he's gonna win? Why would they fight again?" And I was
Mhm.
like, "True, True, but now that I've seen it play out on television, I can see why they're gonna fight again. Obviously, they're gonna fight again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was definitely a match that didn't deliver 100%. I thought the Orange Cassidy and Pac one was a great surprise, and then I do agree with you in a way that the main event also didn't necessarily give us entirely what we were expecting, or it just had so much to again
Or
follow
the
up
false
off of.
finishes, man. Like there's so many moves that these guys do. Like they both have good records. If we're gonna pretend like the records are a thing that we have to pay attention to, they have great records. They have great moves that finish matches. Why would we not see false finishes in that match? Like
Yeah.
that's the
That's
main
fair.
event. That's
It's
the
the
main
main
event,
event. It's the
man. Come
title
on.
match. You're dropping the title. You would think you would have at
There,
least
there,
one.
there was
And it was
really no main event.
mostly
There was no
strikes. There
false
wasn't
finishes.
really a lot of anything in that match. It felt like to me.
It felt like your generic run of the mill, you know, the heel has his stable, the
Yep.
stable does their thing, the stable gets thrown out, and then they have the fair one-on-one match where the face wins. It followed too much of a formula for me to like ever actually get invested in.
It
From
was
the get-go, I felt like I knew who was going to win that match.
It was
Yeah.
very much a WWE style main event championship match between these two guys, which makes sense considering the time they spent with that company. You're not going to necessarily get what you want from the independent scene in this main event, but I think there was just so many convoluted things about it too that if you haven't listened to our previous podcast on that show, you should go back and listen to it. I had a lot more to say about the match that I'm not going to get into now.
Yeah.
But I just think that there was too much in terms of Jericho wanting to be disqualified and the opportunities being there, but not really executing on that, and that being a part of the story then making no sense, and just a lot more than that. So I think that the main event just left a lot to be desired in terms of everything. But overall, the show as a whole was really good and potentially one of the top 2 shows they've done thus far.
Yeah.
It was a good show.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on everything we said already, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But I would agree the main event was a dud, but overall, it was a good show. I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the matches that I would say I didn't like as much. So I don't want to say anything on this
Which
was a
ones would you
bad
say
match.
that you didn't enjoy?
Cody, MJF, and Moxley and Jericho, like
Really?
you.
I
But
agree.
but with that said, again, I didn't hate these matches. It's just there's a lot I didn't like about them.
Oh yeah, no, the same for Nyla and Chris Statlander. I didn't particularly enjoy that match, but there was nothing bad about it. You know, it wasn't like a horrible, offensive match that you watch it and you're like, my intelligence is being insulted because I'm watching this. It was just like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I have a good idea who's gonna win, and nothing in the match surprised me.
Yeah, and overall, again, like I said, the show had a lot of really good things about it. And the ironic thing is the way and the style and the pacing that we got for the main event. They almost suffered a lot for following that Pac versus Orange Cassidy match, which had just a whole different style to it, something much more entertaining and appealing at that point in the night. That they were just following something pretty difficult to follow if you really think about what was going on. And you wouldn't, on paper, you wouldn't think that. But the way it turned out and the way that match turned into it kind of did, because Orange was turned into a star, whereas Mox just kind of felt like around the same level he's been at, which isn't to say he's not a star. It's just like this didn't necessarily elevate him.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, he's always been pushed as like a main event character. So how do you push a main event character beyond the main event? You know what I mean? He won the title.
I agree, but I think
It
that
could have been done better.
I think the way to explain that, or what my thought process would be, is that when Omega takes that shift to the next level, we'll see how a main event player can be elevated to that next upper echelon of wrestlers. And that's not to say that Mox isn't necessarily there. He gets there when he's in his bag of being like really personal, really dark, and then there's like a hardcore match involved at the end of that. That's where Mox could really elevate himself to that level. Omega can do it at any point, it feels like. It's just whenever they decide to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah.
But that wraps up our discussion on the pay-per-view. Let's go ahead and jump into some recent news. And the biggest news that the internet wrestling world has been buzzing about in terms of AEW or professional wrestling in general, really, has been the story regarding Matt Hardy. He went on social media yesterday night, or actually early this morning, midnight, 12 a.m., to say that his deal with WWE had officially expired. That's not to say he won't return there. He said he was leaving the door open for a variety of things. However, the interesting note of that is the second that this live video ended, AEW tweets out a picture saying that the Exalted One is near, which then, if you zoom in on this picture of the Exalted One is near, in very hidden colors, it says he is sitting in a dead tree, and Matt Hardy in this video is sitting in a wooden chair, very much a dead tree. Comes right after the video is posted. So many people are connecting the dots here to say what is already being assumed is that Matt is on his way.
Yeah, it seems like it, or if not, they're just if Matt is not on his way, then they're totally just capitalizing off of that Matt Hardy video. But if that's the case, they better have something real fucking good.
Yeah, I might be pessimistic, but I feel like if Matt Hardy isn't gonna come, I feel like this is a mistake to capitalize on all this
Yeah.
shit. Because you're just capitalizing on all the geeks and freaks that are following this as intently as we are, and they just anticipate Matt Hardy's gonna come, and the timing kind of lines up right, and everybody that was following it like that kind of knew the timing would kind of line up right. At this point, I feel like if it's not Matt Hardy, it's going to be a disappointment.
Yeah.
They'd have to do something very, very good for me to be like, that's cool. That's a different alternative I didn't think of. And I also appreciate it.
For me, it would honestly have to be Marty Scurll being allowed to wrestle in AEW. That's the
Fuck
only
Marty
alternative.
Scroll.
I think
I know you don't
that
want,
Matt
but
would
like
fit
as
this.
far as star power goes, that's the only person I can think of who would match or get as much internet buzz.
You see, because I'm sitting here and I'm going to the Rochester show, I feel like Brody Lee, if it's done correctly, could be a good leader. I don't really know. I don't know how this is going to go. I anticipate he's going to be there at some point. He's going to show up. We got a lot of potential debuts coming up in the next month with
Yeah.
Archer, Lee, and Hardy. Maybe like if the things plan out correctly the way we want them to go.
I think that without a shadow of a doubt, almost that it's going to be Matt. I think that
Gotta be, man.
I think the way AEW does things, they never ever leaned into the Punk thing heavy because it was never a sure thing. They haven't really leaned into anything heavy. That hasn't been a sure thing. They haven't leaned into anything with New Japan that could make fans really get excited. Anything with Punk that could make fans get excited and buy pay-per-views. They don't seem to be leaning into that. So because of that, I think that this is just very simple storytelling, and when it's simple, simple yet complex, in the fact that it's simple enough where we know where it's going. We know that it's going to be Matt, but sometimes that's just how wrestling goes, and they're not going to go the Vince McMahon route of, well, the fans know, brother, so change it up automatically so we can swerve them. Instead, I think it's just going to be what we expect, and that's going to be the best thing for everyone, and I don't think it will take long for this type of thing to really elevate Matt and everyone around him.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that Matt comes on the 318 show. That'd be very great if Matt made his debut as the Exalted One on the 318 show in Rochester, New York.
Yeah,
I know is that it has to be sometime soon because they didn't do it on the pay-per-view because if it's going to be Matt, they can't. But if it's not on the pay-per-view, then you want to get the ball rolling or at least start hyping up the Exalted One is going to reveal himself or whatever.
And I feel like that's already what they've done with this Exalted One is near thing. The one thing I will give them is maybe that is because it's always on social media, that's playing into the fact that Matt is also posting on social media at that exact same time. So he's in theory near, but I feel like them saying that at this point, he almost has to show up this week or soon. And here's the thing that also has people buying into the fact that it could be Matt. On Wednesday, he plans on releasing some sort of video at noon Eastern time, which could start revealing a lot of things and start really playing into what's going on. And you would have to assume, in all honesty, if he's going to be the Exalted One, that's what this will be the beginning of. No matter what, it's going to be the start of this. And I when I was watching this video Matt's discussing the ideas of he's going to go other places or he might do other things, I genuinely felt like it was just a way to save face in the idea that they haven't been talking prior to this, that this wasn't their whole idea before. Because that's the only thing I can assume, because why else would you go out of your way to do this? Like, again, it does get the scent off of the story as well, but I just think it's interesting. But I do think that Matt will be with the company sooner than later, possibly as soon as this
I
Wednesday.
hope so.
Me
I hope
too.
so.
Yeah.
Because I feel like ever since he joined WWE, he's been limited. Since he's reinvented himself, he's
Absolutely.
been kind of limited. And the limitations on a company like this, I feel like the limitations are not as great. You know, you can do
They're
whatever the
almost
fuck you want to.
non-existent. They really just let guys do their own thing.
Yeah,
There's a big piece of me that is very much like I'm taming the excitement, but I'm very excited the more I think about Matt coming
I'm the
in
same way. I'm
and
the same way
being
because
yeah,
I'm
able
thinking
to
of
do that character he did with Impact that was so interesting. It drew in, I think, all three of
yeah,
us at a time where we didn't even
yep,
care
absolutely.
about probably wrestling at all, but we were tuned into that segment of the final deletion because it was something that was right up our alley at the very least. So I'm
I'm
very
absolutely
cautiously
open
excited
for it.
and hoping that Wednesday at noon I can just be like, yes, this is going to be sick. So
Mhm.
who knows? Phil did mention that there are quite a few debuts lined up or potentially coming. One we know for
Okay.
sure, Lance Archer this Wednesday, but another one happened this Saturday and was confirmed as a full-time signing, and we have to get Phil's response to the fact that Colt Cabana is officially
Right.
a member of the All Elite Wrestling roster. Tony Khan confirmed this during a media scrum following the event. This is where most of our news will come from this week, the media scrum that Tony Khan did. And in this, he said basically that Colt will be on as a wrestler, a potential coach, and also probably a commentator. And it sort of felt like the way that Khan and then Colt Cabana's follow-up to it sort of leaned into the idea that maybe he's going to be the commentator for whatever their second show is, or at least be a big part of whatever that show is.
Phil,
Yeah,
what you
I'm
think?
biased on this. I don't care about anything Cool Cabana does.
I'll let you say all the bad stuff, and then I'm going to sell you on something good.
Okay, so he came out, he got beat down on the pre-show. You know, who could possibly care about this unless you previously know about Colt Cabana and you know that he's boys with everybody in the back and he's gonna get his shit in. But I feel like at this stage in his career, Colt Cabana is gonna be one of the guys that kind of like takes a back seat, lets everybody get their shit in when he's got to wrestle, and he's going to put a lot of people over. And that's what I could just assume. I hope so. I hope Cole Cabana isn't a prime part of the everyday, every week TV show because it's an era that's bygone. He's not a part of that era. Commentary wise, I could see it. He's a charismatic dude. His charisma has always been the main part of his shit. He's never been like a great wrestler, but he has a lot of good charisma. So commentary wise, I could see it. But if he's gonna be like an everyday, every week kind of wrestler, that's where I have a problem with it. But if he's
Phil,
just gonna
you've
be like
surprised me
if
because
he's just going to be a voice on the secondary show, who cares?
this is
Sure,
not as
give me
bad as I
Colt
thought this
Cabana.
was going to be. I thought you were going to hate this man to death. I kind of agree with you. I think Colt Cabana right now in AEW would shine the most, not even in a commentary role, but in more of a producer role. I think he would give a lot to the younger guys who are there, who are starting out, and I think he could be a great agent and helpful in that regard. And on commentary, he could kill it. And I don't think anybody wants to see Cole Cabana get a world title
No,
run in 2020.
no. See, I thought his debut was a good thing because he comes in, he gets his shit in, and then he gets beat up by established people from the company. He gets beat up, but he also got his shit in, so it's not like he's a total loser. He
Hmm.
gets his stuff in, he gets beat up. You know, he's on the same level as basically everybody else except for like 12 people on the whole show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's, well, again, as AJ said, a little bit surprised with Phil's optimism of this one. One, I will say that I think Colt could have a world title run in him. If you give him, yep,
Shut up.
dude,
You're
he's
such
a
a
little,
loser.
he's a little bit old, but with the right story, I think Colt Cabana of all people could do the
right
as
I
a,
don't
story.
disagree.
as
I
a
don't
heel,
disagree
as a
wholeheartedly,
heel,
but
and with his ability in the ring, I think he could really step up to the next level and do a real honest, great run. But that's not what I'm trying to sell you on.
that would take a lot of context and circumstance.
I just had to respond to AJ's point on that. But here's where I think he will fit in and what I hope they do. Colt is known for two things. One, his podcast, which if they're going to do a podcast, they need to put Colt on it because theirs isn't bad, but it would be better with Colt. Second of all, if you're going to use Colt, what you need to do is they're hinting in the idea that he's going to be part of the secondary show. He's hinting in the idea that it's going to be a role involved with some of the younger talent. Colt is also very well known for his time doing the Wrestling Road Diaries. I think that it would be very interesting to put Colt on the road with younger talent and see how they do on it. This is a concept I've pitched on this podcast plenty of times before, but I think Colt would be the absolutely perfect person to produce it in terms of you put Colt on the road and let him do that. So
that would be
I agree with
interesting.
you.
That would be very interesting. I would like that.
So I think that it would be a beneficial thing. And again, I think that whatever it is, he's definitely going to be a part or a main part potentially of that secondary show, just how they've been talking about it, hinting about it. And I think it's a good thing for him. I think he's someone who could utilize a consistent role. He's been the face of independent wrestling in a sense, like do it yourself, make your money through Pro Wrestling Tees, do the podcast. He's been a face of that, and I've probably listened to thousands of his podcasts. So who are we to come on our
Are you
podcast?
saying that he is lesser than Joey Ryan?
What I don't understand your question.
Yeah, what?
They're very similar, and Joey Ryan didn't want to sign a real deal. They make their money on the independent.
Joey Ryan signed with Impact.
Joey's also older and has a gimmick that doesn't really translate to AEW television as
I
well as
fucking
Colts
hate
does.
both of them. Fuck them.
But but I think that Colt's in a position now where he's ready to settle down with a company that's going to be more open with what he has to do, and he's not even if he were to sign on as a producer in WWE, he would be such a small fish in a big pond. Whereas now he's probably one of the better producers in AEW and will have an ability to put his input on quite a few different things. You'd have to imagine, just because he has such a smart mind.
I absolutely agree with you because I don't want to see him on a huge on-screen role, but if he's gonna contribute to the back and everybody and how things flow together off screen, the more the merrier, man. If you want to join on commentary for the second commentary team, go ahead, man. I have no problem with that, but if he's gonna get a prominent on-screen role, that's where I have a problem. But everything beyond that, like I said, man, he's a charismatic dude. I was talking to Kira earlier. There's a lot of people who have charisma but can't wrestle, and there's a lot of people who can wrestle but don't have charisma. And there's there's a short amount of there's a short amount of people who do both.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100%.
Cole Cabana's that guy who has a lot of charisma, but in ring, he doesn't bring a lot to the table.
Bullshit, dude.
No, he's great in ring.
He's great in ring.
No, as opposed to people who are on the product right now, he's not on that level.
He just doesn't do that style of wrestling, but when he does, he's not bad at all. It's just more of a comedic style.
He's an older dude, man. He's been around for a long time.
I think it's fair to
say. So
is
Chris Jericho.
No. I think Phil is right.
Whatever, man. That's fucking Chris Jericho.
We are thinking of Cabana in more of his prime role, where he is probably, because I remember seeing him last year in Chicago at a wrestling tournament, and it's not to say that he did bad, but he is a lot more limited with his age. Again, not to say that he's bad, and not even to say that he's that old, but he is 45 now, so. But speaking of older wrestlers and news coming from the media scrum, Dustin Rhodes had a media scrum, and in it, he announced that he was going to focus more on tag team wrestling, and his main tag team partner would be none other than QT Marshall. So, and their manager would be Brandy Rhodes. So it seems like a much more honest version of the stable that Brandy was trying to have in the first place. And this was it wasn't an announcement I expected to be made as like an important one, but here we are.
Oh man,
I mean that's fine. They have a cool tag team finisher like me and Phil saw. I don't expect them to shoot up in the rankings and the AEW tag team division, but if they want to establish themselves as a tag team, more the merrier. Like Phil was saying about Colt, uh, that's gonna be all right. They really do need more tag teams, even if they're just tag teams to kind of take losses or put guys over. And Dustin does have a lot to offer, so there's no reason to not use him.
I think it's great because one thing that AEW does really well is promote the tag team division. There are so many tag teams that there are some tag teams they forget about, kind of.
Yeah.
It's totally different from the women's division where like they have so many people they don't even know who to promote or what's going on. But with the tag team division, they really have a grasp on what's going on. Even a lesser team like Dustin and QT Marshall, you don't want to see Dustin in a singles role. You don't want to see him like competing for a title. You don't really want to see him as a prominent person on your TV
Mhm.
screen. But if he's in a tag team with somebody who's like not exposed as much, like a QT Marshall, that's a tag team that after a few weeks will build momentum and could like get a crowd reaction. Uh,
Definitely.
Are you
Terrible thing.
hyping up this tag team right now? Is that what is happening?
Oh
You
no,
think
man.
QT Marshall and Dustin is going to be a huge deal?
I'm
I don't
not
think it's
saying
going to
it's
be a
going to
huge
be a
deal, but
huge
I'd agree
deal.
that it could be something.
I
Because
Yes,
Dustin
I'm
Rhodes
not
does
saying that,
get the crowd hot.
That's
brother. I'm
fair.
saying that if you got Brandy Rhodes committed to this and she's going to be their valet or whatever, she's a prominent character. You know, she's gonna drop all her shit in the Nightmare Collective, and she's gonna be their manager from now on. It's a big thing. I'm just saying, it's a big thing.
That's fair, and it kind of surprised me in the media scrum to find out that QT's been wrestling for about 15 years or so
Oh
himself,
my god.
so quite a
Oh yeah,
long
that's.
time.
I
And
don't know. I don't know who in the chat I was saying that to. Who the hell QT Marshall is? But somebody told me that he's been around for a while and he's an established person. He's just had a little break in the action, like kind of like Brandon Color, where he took
Yeah,
a little break and then
he got
came back.
sidelined with an injury. That was the main thing in Ring of Honor. He was kind of on the rise in Ring of Honor, and then he got injured and couldn't do much for a long time.
Yeah.
well, this could be an opportunity for him to do something than be more than just Cody's sidekick. So that's good for him, and good to see the potential for that tag team in the future. Because Phil made me a little bit more optimistic than I was initially thinking that they were probably just going to be a job team, which is
Oh, they
that's
definitely
crazy to
hyped it
me.
up, brother. They hyped it up in the beginning of the pay-per-view when Dustin lost and QT was there in the ring consoling him, and he put his head in QT's arms, and I was like, "Gay." But at the same time, that really builds the tag team relationship. Like you don't see shit like that unless you are a tag team that's being built from the bottom up.
Mhm.
That low point.
Yeah, that's fair. So I don't know, interesting there, and I think that we'll have to wait and see necessarily what they do with that team. But you have to expect it's going to almost have an immediate impact on this week's Dynamite. Not that I expect them to be getting a championship shot, but if they're promoting it in this way at the media scrum after the show, then it's probably going to be them being showcased in some way, shape, or form this Wednesday night.
It's funny because right now I feel like it's a perfect time for them to do a tag team tournament, and they already did that, so you can't do it now. But you've got a lot of teams, like even lower card teams that are established. Like at that point, you had Private Party, and they had their run, and they did their little thing. But at
Full
this point
disclosure,
now,
I would not care if they did another tag team tournament right now. I would be
no,
happy.
It would kind
because
of feel like a
there are
lot, but
some.
I would want it to be a different style of tournament, maybe something
Yeah,
more like
like a
the
round robin or
yeah,
something.
something like that where
Yeah.
you're not doing the same exact thing because it would feel very much like something we had just done, but it would feel even just with four teams important to do something like that and then showcase these four lower card teams that do need that establishment for them that haven't really gotten it.
I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with you, man.
Yeah.
And then some other news coming out of the media scrums. We have Tony Khan once again. He's referencing this time Cody Rhodes. He had mentioned on a media call that he did that he would love to move Dynamite off of Wednesdays and go to Mondays somewhere in the next 5 years. Khan immediately shut this down in the middle of the media scrum. He says this is something that, yes, Cody's an executive vice president, but Khan is the president, so this isn't going to happen. He will never want to compete with Monday Night Football because it's one of the most prestigious things in sports, he says. So I think it's an easy cop out for him because he is a part of the NFL. He has very deep ties in the NFL. It's not just a matter of being a partial owner. His family does own the Jaguars, which are a team in the NFL. They might not be very popular, but they're a team. So it's fair for him to not want to compete with that established product. And the ramifications of competing with that and then WWE as well. So.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I totally agree with you. Those are great points that you make, and they will never ever compete on Monday night.
No.
That's just some showmanship bullshit, in my opinion. They'll never be on
That's a
Monday
TNA
night.
move.
Oh yeah, no, because like Andrew said, the Khans are very into the Jaguars business, and even though yes, truly, the Jaguars will never be on Monday night, but still, as under the banner of the NFL, they're going to take eyes away from the product. That point from the media scrum, I feel like Wednesdays are the best night.
They really are. Wednesdays are a perfect night for them. And if things keep on going the way they are, I don't see any reason why they would ever need to change. My biggest question is what day will the new show be on? I'm curious about that to not interfere with basketball because it seems like Friday might be the answer, and that competes with SmackDown.
Yeah, I'm also on that train, AJ. I don't know when this new show would come up. Of course, me being the pessimistic, I see that a new show is going to come, and there's another 2 hours of wrestling that I have to watch every week. And what day do I have to sacrifice out of my busy week that I would watch something like this?
I for one don't expect it to be 2 hours. I assume it'll be
I
one.
don't either.
I also I could see it being super untraditional. If it's going to be an actual wrestling show and just wrestling, I could see them going the Saturday morning slam type route with this, where it's a taped thing. They throw it on Saturday mornings on TNT or wherever, and people can tune into that. And I honestly wouldn't be too opposed to something different like that at that time. I mean, and then you have it lead into your pay-per-views. But if it's something more akin to The Ultimate Fighter or something like that, then I would just have it follow any primetime NBA game. I would have that follow. So like on Thursdays when they do it, I imagine would be the best day, or Tuesdays.
Yeah, it's funny because if you don't want to do 2 hours, then it's strange where you would put that hour in, especially because with the NBA games, especially in the playoffs coming up, because in the next few months we're going to have a whole 2.5 months of playoff basketball.
That's when I would debut it too, right at the height of the
No,
playoffs. Right after one of those games
brother.
on TNT where you have so many people tuned in watching the basketball game. Throughout the whole game, I'm running trailers or previews of whatever this new taped show is. Hopefully it's good content, so you have good shit to show people, and then you have a whole audience built in ready to tune in, and it's off of. But then again, they do like NBA recap shows.
I understand it, man. I really do. I understand it, especially if there's two established basketball teams going against each other on TNT. But you don't know with basketball. You don't know how long the game is gonna go, man.
Yeah.
With overtime and all that bullshit, it's a drawn out process. Basketball is the shortest game of all of the top four professional sports in all of America. It is the fastest, most established sport that goes along quickly, but at the same time, it's also the easiest one that goes into overtime. and you have this run-on, drawn-on shit on a network television show, and you don't really have control over it.
Even
Well, if it's
now,
a taped show, does
here's
that
my
matter that much?
and here's my argument with that too is you get a double overtime game and you might pull an extra million viewers from social media who are like, oh shit, this is went from an important playoff game to a super important playoff game. Now, but I do get what you're saying. The biggest thing that would either make me want to do this or hinder me from doing it is if I can do it straight off the basketball game. If there's a pre or a post show game or a post show anything, there's no sense. You lose almost all your viewers by the time that's
I
over.
agree with that.
You can't if you're not running directly into whatever the product is, then we're wasting our time even discussing it.
Absolutely.
And I honestly think that TNT does do post show stuff, so it wouldn't work. I think that maybe promoting it during the playoffs at the very least and having it debut maybe on one of those nights right after the NBA is over wouldn't be a bad idea. You could do something seasonal then especially if it's like a tough enough type thing.
That would be. I really do want an Ultimate Fighter kind of thing.
So hopefully that's something that we get. That's something I'm expecting in a way. But we did get an announcement of something really cool at the pay-per-view that we didn't talk too much about on Sunday. The Blood and Guts match has been announced for, when is it, March 25th?
I believe so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So sometime in the end of March.
It is March 25th because it's the week after the Rochester show.
So a week after Phil will be attending AEW Live, they will be doing a very, very cool match, that being the Blood and Guts match. Tony Khan went out of his way to make sure it is not called a War Games match. They're not referring to it as such. And that makes me wonder if they'll do their own spin on it. Maybe make it something like, I don't know, but maybe make it for a championship contention. If it's like, instead of doing like a 4 versus 4 thing, maybe it's just a 8-man scramble inside of a cage with 2 rings.
I don't know about that. I don't think you want to mess with the formula too much with the War Games match.
I just don't know that the formula works super good for network television either, though. And I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I am just interested to see what they do utilizing the 2 rings in general, because with AEW, it's not just going to be for that one match. Wrestlers will be utilizing both rings for the whole show.
Oh, yeah.
Darby Allin.
Exactly. He's one of the first that comes to mind. Him, Sammy, the guys in SCU, the Young Bucks, like the dives that go to the outside now just go to another ring. So there's a lot of exciting and interesting things that they'll be able to do throughout the night. But I just because there's no, it's weird because it's announced before a story is announced. So that's why I get what you're saying, AJ. You don't want to mess with the formula, but the way it's being announced is much more like when WWE announces like a Money in the Bank or Elimination Chamber early. You're like, oh, I know that match is a big match, but what is it for? The War Games would be more for like a Cody versus MJF blow off, but instead it's something that it seems like they're almost rushing.
Yeah, I do hear you on that, but on the other hand, you got 4 weeks to build it.
It's going to be so unnatural though if it's just like how do you build it into a storyline now? How do you build it into a storyline now where you have Cody or I think again maybe Cody and MJF you could still do it because they have that established story going.
Well,
but
you
outside
have
of
the
that,
Circle and the Elite, and if you want to turn Adam Page, then here's a great time to do it.
I feel like you've already built up to that match because they had the preview for that match, the War Games match. They had the preview of it before Orange Cassidy and Pac, and in that match, they established that the Best Friends were rivals with the Lucha Brothers, who are also established on the same kind of level as the Best Friends. They were there. I feel like those 2 teams will be involved in the match. I know that there's not going to be a lot of established stars in the War Games match, but at that point, it feels like an established rivalry where the 2 of them have been they've been on opposite sides. They've been they've been feuding for like a month at least. I mean, even before the pay-per-view, Orange Cassidy has been feuding with Pac. You don't really know where all this is going to go because Pac is in that level where you don't really know what he's going to do. He could be the 5th man if you want to make it a 5-man match.
Yeah, I don't know exactly
Probably.
that I would include the Best Friends and the Lucha Brothers. It's possible, especially if you're just looking to fill out the two opposing sides or two opposing teams in this match. But my point essentially is that it's super unnatural for a feud that's going on already to be like, man, let's use that match that's already been announced. It just feels very weird.
Yeah.
Like in a way for like if Jericho and Mox were to say, hey, they announced that blood and guts match. Let's go and be involved in it. Like I don't understand a reasoning for a team to be involved in it. Whereas if it was more so like this feud between Cody and MJF was going on, and Cody was like, we have to do this match type or something along those lines. So
I
it
feel
just
like it's got to be the Inner Circle and the Elite, though, doesn't it? I mean, this match is built for that kind of feud.
And at
but
the
they
same
haven't built
time,
that feud. That's where I don't understand why you think that that's coming. Like where do you go in
Because
the
what other
next three?
factions like that
Yeah,
do you
just
have?
because it's factions doesn't. I don't understand. You just that's where it feels even more unnatural and like just unpurposely thrown together. Of well, we have two factions in a match that 4 versus 4 go in, so let's do it like it's EWR or like we're playing SmackDown versus Raw, faction versus faction. But like, there's no story to it, and this is supposed to be a storied match. We're just going to say, all right, now the Elite are going. Like, it's so weird. It's like it's forceful booking, which is so you do that for singles matches, not for a blood and guts match. And the name of the match is fucking stupid.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't like it
name of
as a
the
match
match.
type. I
Yeah.
would have liked it as a pay-per-view.
But yeah, let's have a blood and guts match. Why in the world would anyone in wrestling agree to that unless you're getting like a huge payday or a championship opportunity after that? I'm good. I don't want to be in your blood and guts match. And it was funny because they're like, well, how was it selling Turner on the idea of a blood match, over a match that's going to include a lot of
Yeah.
blood? He was like, I didn't say there was going to be a lot of blood. It's like, why the
Yeah,
fuck
yeah.
did you name it that then? Like, so I don't know, and that's again me harping on it a lot in a negative way. I honestly anticipate it'll turn out to be something good, and maybe they will go AJ's route of the Elite versus the Inner Circle. I just think right now it would make no sense. So and it's like, why would Hangman ever agree to put himself inside a cage alongside the Young Bucks when he's already taken himself out of the group? So
Because he wouldn't unless it was built up from next week, from the
Yeah.
very first point that we can build it up from next week. Aside from that, it doesn't make any sense. You're right.
I
yeah,
would agree with that. I think they would have to start the build very quickly.
Yeah, I
so but it
mean
does make sense.
they don't have to do much of the build.
It
I
makes
mean
sense
the
to
build.
me doing it on a Dynamite though, as opposed to a pay per view, because this is usually
yeah.
a match type. Well, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
a match type where you have to forfeit seats essentially, because that you have a
Mhm.
ring that takes up more room. In Dynamite shows, you're generally not forfeiting too many seats. They have the seat capacity
Yeah.
available, and this was
Yeah.
probably
I mean-
something they planned out well in advance, because you can't just run a match like this at any arena. You have to have the right type of setup. So.
That's what I'm saying, brother. At the very core of it, there's going to be that core, like 2 against 1, whatever it's going to be. Cody against, at the very least, the proud and powerful, whatever the the
The Inner Circle, are you struggling?
I'm struggling.
But yeah, that really
just
wraps
whatever
up
it is.
all that we have to talk about in terms of news or anything coming out of the media post-show media scrums. We do have Phil very desperately wanting to run through this week's episode of Dark, which aired on Friday as opposed to Tuesday. I assume we're still going to get something on Tuesday. They did tape a match at the pay-per-view featuring 4 of the women. I don't entirely remember. I believe it was Rio, Yuka Sakazaki, Britt Baker, and Penelope Ford in a tag team match. But so we have that to look forward to this Tuesday. But Phil, go ahead and quickly run through your AEW Dark recap from this past Friday.
Okay, AEW Dark from last week had 4 separate must-see moments in every single match. The first match was Luther against Sonny Kiss. On paper, it sounds like a piece of trash, but it was not a piece of trash. It was a very standard match. You know, you think of these two guys. I mean, seriously, you think of these two guys fighting each other, and you feel like it's a piece of crap. And for the most part, it was. But I mean, it wasn't a terrible match. You know, these guys got their shit in. It wasn't embarrassing. It wasn't terrible. Luther won. He hit the camel clutch with a face stretch. I would say that's what that move is. His finisher is a camel clutch with a face stretch. The must see moment was Jimmy Havoc comes out and he stares down Luther, and apparently they have like a feud. This isn't the first week they've had this
Oh,
feud.
you're right.
That's why it's a must-see moment, because these guys are going to feud again. I don't know if it's going to be on television, if it's going to be on Dark. I don't know, but it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, that's stupid.
I don't
I'm
think
actually
anybody wants to
really
see
frightened. I'm really frightened that I'm gonna have to see that this Wednesday in Denver because I said that Luther was cool, and then
No, brother.
I watched Road
Oh.
to Denver, and we had Jimmy Havoc hype video, so it's
We sure
coming.
did.
Oh yeah, no. I'm
Anyways, continuing on with Dark.
On the second match, we had the Dark Order against Michael Nakazawa and Peter Avalon. This match was as
It
great as
literally
you
put
think
me
it
to
was.
sleep the first time I watched it.
But it had a must-see moment, as every match on Dark did. This must-see moment was when Leva Bates, in the intro with Peter Avalon, she was kind of turning face, man. She was not about Peter Avalon's real gimmick, where he kind of comes out and he shits on the home crowd.
She does
And he
that every
says
week, Phil.
somewhere. You would assume that it's leading somewhere, right?
No, it's not. They've done that since the
She
beginning.
Okay, I didn't know that. Well, she pulled out a book. It said, "Don't be a dick," and he didn't listen to it. He lost. The Dark Order won. They were going into the pay-per-view. Of course they were going to win. They won. It doesn't really matter. The third of four matches was Dr. Britt Baker against Miranda Elise. This match was a pile of crap. This was the only match that really insulted my intelligence. Britt Baker got a lot of her shit in. It was really a one-sided match. The reason why this match was so bad was because Elise, while Britt Baker was setting up her submission finish, tapped out early before she locked in the mandible claw, or whatever she calls it. The mandible claw. She tapped out before that even hit. It was really awkward, really weird. Nobody really paid attention to it because it was a dark match. No one cares.
What was the must-see moment?
Must-see moment was her not tapping out to the actual finish, because if you're not an idiot and you've watched Britt Baker finish matches with her submission finisher, you knew when the finish was coming, and she tapped out early to it. So it was the must-see moment because it was so bad.
Okay.
The final match was Private Party against Brandon Cutler and Shawn Spears. On paper, it sounds like crap. It sounds like your generic Shawn Spears match where he's trying to find a tag partner, and the tag partner is unsatisfactory. No one cares. But the must-see moment in this match was this was kind of a low-key Brandon Cutler highlight match. He performed very well. He got the hot tag. He did a lot of stuff. He at one point had the crowd chanting Brandon Cutler. They were chanting his name. It was crazy because, as a casual fan, I don't really care about Brandon Cutler. The must-see moments of this match, there were actually two of them. One of them, when Brandon Cutler came down to the ring, he's very Dungeons and Dragons kind of guy. I don't really know the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. He rolled a dice on his way down, and he rolled a 1. And everybody on commentary who understood what this meant knew that it was a horrible thing. Brandon Cutler was coming into his demise. He rolled a 1 out of 20. Everybody on commentary who understood what this meant shit on him. It was terrible. Cased how much of a loser he was, but it was even great because when he went into this tag team match and the showcase was about him, when Sean Spears was walking up the ramp and he was like, this guy is not my tag partner, Brandon Cutler he worked it. He got the hot tag. Not only that, but he was in a position to win the match. He had the crowd chanting his name, and Spears was still walking away, and he turned around. It was the first time of this storyline where Spears turned around and he was like, maybe this guy is the answer. And Spears watched as Cutler did the hot tag. He went through all the shit. He got in position to win. He didn't win, but Spears was looking around like he was going to win and eventually walked out on him. And that's my must-see moment of the match because it just added more to the storyline than you would expect when you look on paper and you see these two teams fighting each other. It looks like a pile of crap, but in the end, it was actually very entertaining.
Sounds like an interesting episode of Dark. Yeah. So that's our Dark recap for the week. Our boy Phil giving you the Dark recap every week, hopefully going forward. AJ, is there anything else you need to add this week?
Nothing I can think of.
So, Phil, what would you rank Dark out of 5 stars, seeing as you were so determined to?
And I would say 3 out of 5. It wasn't an insultingly bad episode of Dark. You look at the card and it looks like a piece of shit.
Yeah,
but
so-
it really wasn't. That's what made it so great to me. Like it wasn't super entertaining, but at the same time it wasn't insulting to your intelligence.
I would
And
rather
that's all that
gargle
matters.
cyanide than watch what you just described to me.
Yeah, I don't know
it
if
was
that
a
was
good
an
match.
episode of Dark that I would be super interested in. And to the listeners that are still listening after such a wonderful recap of a wonderful episode, thank you so much for tuning in and always supporting the All Elite podcast and supporting everything we do. AJ, go ahead and plug your social media account.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And Phil, where can they find you on social media?
Philip Domino, Philip with 2 L's, DIMIMNO.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can check us out on Instagram at All Elite Everything. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/All Elite Pod. And if you want to follow our wonderful host, me, on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at All Elite Andy. And until next time, until we return with our boy Phil and Big Match AJ, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Yo,